You do not need to win the argument. I know. That sounds wrong. When someone manipulates you, every instinct says, fight back, explain yourself, defend your position, prove that you are right and they are wrong. But here is what the Stoics understood that most people never will. The manipulator does not want to win the argument either. They want you to have it. Because the moment you engage, the moment you defend, explain, justify, you have entered their arena. And in their arena, the rules are theirs. The most powerful thing you can do to a manipulator is the thing they cannot prepare for. Nothing. Not passive nothing. Not frozen nothing. Not helpless nothing. Strategic nothing. Deliberate nothing. The kind of silence that communicates more than any sentence ever could. This is what the Stoics practiced. And it is what you are about to learn. You have tried talking, you know how it ends. You raise a concern, and suddenly you are defending your tone. You ask a question and somehow you are the one answering. You start the conversation knowing exactly what you want to say, and leave having said none of it. This is not because you are inarticulate. It is because the manipulator has a specific skill. They control the frame of the conversation. They decide what the topic is. They decide what counts as reasonable. They decide who is the aggressor and who is the victim. And they do this so smoothly, so instinctively, that by the time you realize the conversation has been hijacked, you are already 3 topics away from where you started, apologizing for something you did not do. You have tried being calm. They escalated. You have tried being logical. They became emotional. You have tried being emotional. They became cold. Whatever frequency you operate on, they shift to the one that destabilizes you most. Epictetus observed that we are not disturbed by things themselves, but by our judgments about them. The manipulator's power lies not in their words, but in your reaction to their words. Every response you give is information. It tells them what works. It tells them where the nerve is. It tells them exactly how to calibrate the next attempt. Your words, however reasonable, are feeding the machine. The Stoics would say, stop feeding it. The Stoic tradition places enormous value on the space between stimulus and response. Viktor Frankl, who studied the Stoics deeply, described this space as the seat of human freedom. Between what happens to you and what you do about it, there is a gap. And in that gap lies your power. The manipulator's entire strategy is to eliminate that gap, to provoke an instant reaction, to create a stimulus so emotionally charged that you respond before you have had time to think. Anger works, guilt works, shock works, flattery works. Anything that bypasses your rational faculty and triggers an automatic response, that is the manipulator's tool of choice. Marcus Aurelius practiced a discipline he described as stepping back from the impression. When something provocative was presented to him, a slight, an accusation, a manipulation, he did not respond immediately. He paused. He examined the impression. He asked, "What is this really? Is this true? Is this something I need to respond to? Or is this designed to pull me out of my center?" This is not passivity. This is the most active form of self-governance that exists. Seneca wrote extensively about the relationship between anger and manipulation. He observed that anger makes us predictable, and predictability is what the manipulator needs. If they know that a certain provocation will produce a certain response, they own the interaction. They can script it in advance. But what happens when the provocation produces nothing? What happens when the guilt trip lands and you simply look at them, calmly, steadily, and do not flinch? What happens when the accusation is hurled and you let it fall to the ground without picking it up? The manipulator does not have a playbook for this. Their entire system depends on your participation. When you withdraw it, not in anger, not in punishment, but in sovereign stillness, the system breaks. This is not a trick. It is a posture. And the Stoics spent their entire philosophical tradition developing it. The word they used was apatheia, not apathy in the modern sense, but freedom from being controlled by reactive emotions. It does not mean you feel nothing. It means your feelings do not determine your actions. You feel the provocation, you recognize it, and you choose, deliberately, consciously, not to be moved by it. This choice, repeated consistently, is the most disorienting thing you can do to someone who has built their entire relational strategy around your predictability. The first tool is the pause. When a manipulator says something designed to provoke, an accusation, a distortion, a guilt-laden question, do not answer immediately. Do not answer at all if the moment allows it. Simply pause. Hold eye contact. Let the silence expand. What happens in that silence is extraordinary. The manipulator, who expected a reaction, is now sitting in the vacuum of one. They are exposed. Their words, hanging in the air without a response, begin to reveal themselves for what they are. And something shifts in the dynamic, because the person who speaks first after a provocation is not the one in control. The person who can hold the silence is. Marcus Aurelius did not need to refute every accusation made against him. He was emperor. He could have demolished any critic with a word. But he understood that responding to every provocation is a form of slavery to the other person's agenda. The pause communicates something that no argument can. I have heard you, I'm not moved, and I do not owe you a performance of my distress. Practice this. Start small. When someone says something manipulative, give yourself 5 seconds before responding, then 10. Then consider whether a response is needed at all. You will be astonished at how much power lives in those seconds. The second tool is the refusal to explain yourself. The manipulator's favorite question is why. Why did you do that? Why do you feel that way? Why can you not just be reasonable? These questions sound fair. They are not. They are invitations to justify your position. And the moment you accept the invitation, you have implicitly agreed that your position requires justification. It does not. You do not need to explain why you have a boundary. You do not need to argue for why your feelings are valid. You do not need to present a case for your own autonomy. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when you stop seeking approval for your choices. The person who can say no without appending a paragraph of explanation is the person who is truly free. When the manipulator asks why, you have several options, all of them silent in spirit, even if they use a few words. I have made my decision. I am not going to discuss this. Or simply, nothing. A look, a nod, a turning away. The manipulator will escalate. They will push harder, demand reasons, accuse you of being evasive or unfair. Let them. Their escalation is proof that your refusal is working. They are trying to find the button that will restart the old pattern. Do not let them find it. The third tool is presence without performance. When a manipulator is working, they are watching you closely. They are reading your face, your posture, your micro-expressions. They are looking for signs of guilt, of doubt, of submission. What they are looking for is a crack, a flicker of uncertainty they can widen into full capitulation. The Stoic counter is to give them nothing to read, not blankness. That comes across as hostility, but steadiness, calm, a face and posture that says, I am here, I am aware, and I am not disturbed. Seneca described the sage as someone whose external composure reflects an internal order. The sage does not perform calmness, they inhabit it. And that inhabitation is visible. It communicates without a single word that the person in front of you has a center that you cannot reach. This is deeply unsettling to a manipulator, because manipulation requires emotional access. If they cannot read you, they cannot calibrate their approach. If they cannot unsettle you, they cannot control you. Practice this with your body. Slow your breathing before a difficult interaction. Plant your feet, relax your jaw, let your hands be still. These are not tricks. They are physical expressions of an inner decision, the decision to remain in your own authority, regardless of what someone else does or says. The body follows the mind, and when the mind is settled, the body communicates sovereignty. These three tools, the pause, the refusal to justify, and the steady gaze, are not separate techniques. They are facets of a single principle: non-engagement, not withdrawal, not avoidance, not the passive nothing of someone who does not know what to do. This is the active nothing of someone who has decided, with full awareness, that this interaction does not deserve their energy. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best answer to anger is silence, not because silence is always the right response, but because silence in the face of provocation is a declaration. It declares that you will not be recruited into someone else's drama, that you will not perform the role they have written for you, that their script requires your participation, and you are declining the part. The manipulator's power is borrowed. It is borrowed from your reactions, your explanations, your emotional investment. When you stop lending it, they have nothing. And that nothing, that void where your compliance used to be, is the most eloquent thing you will ever say. Here's your practice. Before the next difficult interaction, decide in advance what your limits are. Not in the moment, beforehand. Decide what you will and will not discuss. Decide what you are willing to tolerate and where the conversation ends. When the provocation comes, And it will. Pause. Breathe. Feel the urge to respond and let it pass through you without acting on it. Give yourself the gift of 5 seconds of silence before you do anything. If they ask you to justify a boundary, do not. State it once, plainly, and then stop. Repetition is not emphasis, it is negotiation, and you are not negotiating. Watch your body. If your hands are clenching, release them. If your breathing is shallow, deepen it. If your posture is shrinking, straighten. Your body is part of the message. Make sure it says what you mean. And if after all of this the manipulation continues, leave the room, leave the conversation, leave the relationship if necessary. Disengagement is not defeat. It is the final expression of sovereignty. You do not owe anyone your participation in your own diminishment. There is a profound and ancient idea that runs through all of Stoic philosophy. The idea is this: you are not your circumstances. You are not the things that happen to you. You are not the words other people use to describe you. You are the one who decides what those things mean and what you will do about them. The manipulator needs you to forget this. They need you reactive, off balance, unsure. Because a person who remembers their own sovereignty is a person who cannot be controlled. Epictetus, who was born a slave and died a free man, said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." You do not need to raise your voice. You do not need to win the argument. You do not need to say a single word. You only need to remember who you are and stand there. If you are navigating a relationship with a manipulator and need support to rebuild your inner ground, BetterHelp can match you with a therapist who specializes in exactly this kind of recovery. The link is in the description. If this series has changed the way you understand the people around you, subscribe, because in the next video, we turn the lens inward. Because the most important person to understand is not the manipulator, it is you. Be sovereign.